It's been 3 months since we had the last episode of How Is This a Thing? So here we go again. And we begin with this, an article from Fox News. Imperial College model Britain used to justify lockdown, a buggy mess, totally unreliable, experts claim. The heralded model United Kingdom experts have largely used to guide their coronavirus policies is totally unreliable, according to experts. The criticisms follow a series of policy turnabouts, including Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to extend the national lockdown. The United States also used the model, which predicted upwards of 2.2 million deaths in the US without proper action. The prediction helped influence the White House to adopt a more serious approach to the pandemic. Experts have derided the coding from Professor Neil Ferguson, warning that it is a buggy mess that looks more like a bowl of angel hair pasta than a finely tuned piece of programming. In our commercial reality, we would fire anyone for developing code like this, and any business that relied on it to produce software for sale would likely go bust, David Richards, co-founder of British data technology company WANdisco, told the Daily Telegraph. Ferguson, the virus modeller for Imperial College London and a scientific advisor to the government, warned on March 16th that 500,000 people would die from the pandemic without significant action. Prime Minister Boris Johnson responded by imposing a national lockdown, which has only been loosened within the last week. Of course, Neil Ferguson himself was the guy who had broken his lockdown advice by having a married lover over to meet him on 2 occasions, which suggests to me that he really didn't take the whole pandemic thing all that seriously to begin with. Lockdown for thee, but not for me, apparently. Isn't it interesting? All these public figures and so-called experts advising the public on how they should behave and encouraging the government to curtail the rights and freedoms of the populace under lockdown protocols, and yet they themselves flout those same rules. It says it all, really. The imperial model works by using code to simulate transport links, population size, social networks, and healthcare provisions to predict how coronavirus would be spread. Researchers released the code behind it, which developers have criticised as being unreadable. Scientists from the University of Edinburgh have further claimed that it is impossible to reproduce the same results from the same data using the model. The team got different results when they used different machines, and even different results from the same machines. There appears to be a bug in either the creation or reuse of the network file. If we attempt 2 completely identical runs, only varying in that the second should use the network file produced by the first, the results are quite different, the Edinburgh researchers wrote on the GitHub file. A fix was provided, but it was the first of many bugs found within the program. Models must be capable of passing the basic scientific test of producing the same results given the same initial set of parameters. Otherwise, there is simply no way of knowing whether they will be reliable, said Michael Bosnell, professor of mathematical biology at Oxford University. So, that's the data modelling behind the lockdown debunked. Why hasn't the lockdown ended immediately? The whole thing was based on faulty data. So why aren't the public up in arms about this? They've sacrificed the last few months of their lives in quarantine for nothing. Now, before I continue with the rest of this video, just a quick note to say, I have a massive BitChute exclusive video for you to watch, and it's called The Emerging Prison Planet. It's another big one, guys, so please check that out over on BitChute. It's probably a little bit too hot for YouTube. It's linked below, and I hope you can give it a watch and a share. I really appreciate it. Okay, so next up, this one is from the Daily Mail. Doubts raised over Oxford coronavirus vaccine after all of the monkeys that took part in the trial are found to have contracted the disease. Well, that's comforting. I mean, I won't be coerced into taking any vaccine, especially not for a virus with the same fatality rate as the seasonal influenza, but apparently this one is continuing with human trials anyway. All 6 rheus monkeys given the vaccine still became infected with COVID-19. There were also warnings that they may have been able to spread the virus. Oxford University vaccine has already been steamrolled into human trials. A professor from Imperial Trial warned vaccine unlikely to be ready before 2021. The coronavirus vaccine, being developed by scientists at Oxford University, may not prevent people from becoming infected with the disease after all, experts have warned. Well, there's always going to be a new mutation for a coronavirus anyway, so a vaccine becomes pointless. You vaccinate against one and another comes along. considering we already have suitable treatments for COVID-19, which include anti-malaria drugs that show promise, as well as zinc and vitamins. This whole thing is clearly a futile effort. I have to wonder to what extent the public realize they're being manipulated. Will some people take the vaccine because they are legitimately afraid of the virus, or will they take it because they realize that the government won't give them their rights and freedoms back if they don't? In the latest animal trials of the vaccine carried out on rhesus macaques, all 6 of the participating monkeys went on to catch the coronavirus. Dr. William Hasseltine, a former Harvard Medical School professor, revealed the monkeys who received the vaccine had the same amount of virus in their noses as the 3 non-vaccinated monkeys in the trial. This suggests the treatment, which has already received in the region of £90 million in government investment, may not halt the spread of the deadly disease. The bombshell comes after initial reports last week suggested the vaccine offered some immunity against the virus and stopped it getting deep into the lungs, where it becomes deadly. The vaccine, known as CHAdOX1 nCoV-19, is currently undergoing its first human clinical trial as nations accelerate their efforts to tackle the deadly virus. This next article is from Summit.News, UK. TV channel briefly goes off air to encourage viewers to clap for NHS.
Citizen, go outside and publicly show your support for the regime. We're all in this together. Together we can flatten the curve, stay safe, protect the NHS, save lives.
Television channel ITV briefly went off air to encourage people in the UK to take part in the weekly Clap for the NHS event. Yes, really. No TV allowed during worship, remarked a Twitter user who took a photo of the message which said, "We'll be back soon. #ClapForCarers." Clap for Carers is a weekly ritual whereby Brits are urged to stand outside their houses and on their balconies to applaud health workers. The practice has been called cringeworthy and akin to a religious ceremony by some, but millions of normies across the country take part in it with relish. As we previously highlighted, one mother who forgot to take part in the Clapathon, which takes place every Thursday at 8 p.m, was publicly shamed by her neighbours on Facebook the next day. In the United Kingdom, the National Health Service is treated as a religious institution by many who insist that it is the envy of the world and a sterling example of the supremacy of government healthcare. This whole clapping the NHS thing has really been about trying to manufacture a consensus amongst the population. The power of this kind of propaganda is that it's a form of persuasion based upon ritual and repetition. The more people engage in these regular public displays of support for the NHS, and the more they do so en masse in the presence of other members of their community, the more they start to believe it, based on the reinforcement of the group. Mass religious worship and church congregations have been cancelled in favour of what appears to be a new secular religion and worship of the NHS as an institution. And I think the psychology behind this kind of thing is very interesting. For example, here in Ireland, I still maintain that Irish people are very religious, even those who don't necessarily believe in God. They do, however, adopt religious-like belief systems, but in a secular mode of thinking. The historic religious sensibilities of the Irish haven't disappeared overnight. They've just been redirected from God and Christianity to a dogmatic conformity and adherence to all things neoliberal and progressive, etc. And I also think this is the reason why the public here have very quickly embraced all of the social distancing rules and blindly accepted the media narrative. It's funny, I was recently speaking to 2 neighbours about all of this, and though they agreed with me that there was definitely something off about this whole crisis, that was really as far as they were willing to go. And they both said the same thing. People want to believe in something. They were referring to the public's desire and need to place their trust in something during a crisis. In this case, the object of their attention was the media and their government. They want to believe that these institutions are being truthful and will keep them safe. The appeal to authority. It's easier to simply believe than to engage one's critical faculties and go through the labour of reaching a state of skepticism or rationality. The Karens, who feverishly follow the social distancing rules to the letter and then try to enforce them on other people, may be doing so because they believe that breaking those rules is essentially a kind of sin. The virus becomes a kind of superstition. You never actually know how it could manifest in your life. It's invisible and therefore an ever-present threat. So it's about basically falling into ritualistic patterns of keeping one's distance from people, excessively hand-washing, wearing masks, gloves, dutifully standing in line at the grocery aisle, standing on the circles on the ground, following the arrows, and just generally doing whatever you're told without question. Or, in the case of those who buy into it in the UK, clapping for the NHS every Thursday at 8 p.m. The final story of the day is from reclaimthenet.org. Google Drive takes down users' personal copy of Judy Mikovits' Plandemic after it was flagged by the Washington Post. Google is now applying its controversial coronavirus misinformation policies to users' personal files. Ever since big tech platforms started cracking down on what they deem to be coronavirus misinformation, the media has been willfully flagging alleged violations to social media companies and getting content taken down. Yeah, tell me about it. And now the file storage and sharing service Google Drive has started to take down users' files in response to media complaints about them containing coronavirus misinformation. So it's one thing for the likes of YouTube to censor a video from their platform, but for Google to actually delete copies of the same video from people's personal online storage, I think is most invasive, and it's one of the reasons I've personally never trusted cloud storage. As someone once said, there's no such thing as cloud storage, just other people's hard drives. Relying on cloud servers is ultimately irresponsible, as you're basically handing over your data to a third party and placing a great deal of trust in them. Local storage is the best way to go. In an article reporting on the takedown, the Washington Post's Silicon Valley correspondent Elizabeth Dwoskin complains that after the coronavirus documentary Plandemic was censored on social media, some YouTube clips were telling users how to access banned footage from the documentary via Google Drive. She then notes that after the Washington Post contacted Google, Google Drive took down a file featuring the trailer for the Plandemic documentary. The Plandemic trailer isn't the only file that's been censored on Google Drive in recent months. After SpaceX and Tesla founder and CEO Elon Musk linked to what Dwoskin describes as a questionable study about the efficacy of the drug hydroxychloroquine in March, Google blocked access to the document. I'm actually surprised by nothing when it comes to the increasing levels of censorship online these days. If you can think of a way in which content can be censored, it's likely that the big tech companies have already thought of it. Keep everything local, and of course, thank God for BitChute, because on a positive note, thanks to the Streisand effect, most of the censorship has backfired. That about does it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and once again, be sure to check out my exclusive video over on BitChute, The Emerging Prison Planet. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.